civil society actors in Nigeria who work on issues relating to policing, police accountability, rule of law, and other ancillary issues. Is a response first to the directive of the Inspector General of Police to the effect that all the satellite offices and bases of the Inspector General of Police, IRT, which is Intelligence Response Team, and STS, which is Special Tactical Squad, should be closed down, and that they should, operate centrally from Abuja, rather than having a litany of offices and bases across the country, which are most times not accountable to the usual command structure of the Nigerian police. These structures should be closed down and they should operate centrally. In reaction to this very laudable directive of the Inspector General of Police, some people who call themselves actors in the civil society sector in Nigeria issued a statement calling on the Inspector General of Police to resign that particular directive. We didn't find this convenient. You know the Nigerian system, how it operates, how anybody can come to the stage and begin to claim what he or she is not. And we didn't find it convenient because we know that the statement, the directive of the Inspector General of Police is timely, is a welcome directive. And for people who claim to be civil society actors in Nigeria to come and be challenging such informed decision of the Inspector General of Police, which in our view is long overdue. We didn't find that convenient, and we felt there is need for us to, bring our informed position in response to first the directive of the Inspector General of Police and its attendant reaction by the so-called, Youth Alliance of Nigeria. That's the background of the statement that you saw, jointly signed by a number of well-known civil society actors. Of course, you attested to the fact where in your intro that you've been in communication with Justus, Uche, Ijeoma. He's not a known face as far as policing and other incidental issues in Nigeria are concerned. Of course, you also alluded to the fact that Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma, who is a champion of professional policing in Nigeria, that you've been in communication with him over a decade. And so could be said about so many other signatories to the joint statement we issued. That these faces are not new faces in the scene. These are guys that have been working in this sector and they are well known. So in summary, the statement you saw us issue is in response to the directive of the IGP and its attendant reaction by the so-called civil society actors. We needed to put the record straight. We needed to inform Nigerians correctly. We needed to ensure that nobody comes to shock the stage with a view to, deceiving Nigerians or with a view to serving a particular warped interest. That is the background behind the statement we issued.
Thank you. We thank you very much for giving us the background to this to the statement you issued. But if we hear from Okechukwu now, if we can hear about what exactly is this, they call them Police Intelligence Response Unit and the Special Tactical Squad. If you can unmute yourself, Okechukwu, please.
Okay.
Yes. Please tell us about this Police Intelligence Response Unit and the Special Tactical Squad.
Okay. The Nigerian, well, they call it the Inspector General of Police Intelligence Response Squad, and then the, Special Tactical Squad. There are a lot of non-regular units within the Nigerian police created by successive inspectors general of police, which bear the tag of Inspector General of Police, in their names. So what that means is that usually they answer only to the Inspector General of Police. And because of this, a lot of these units, which includes the IRT, Intelligence Response Team, the Special Tactical Squad, there's also the Inspector General of Police monitoring team. They operate like law unto themselves. The IRT in particular was created by the former Inspector General of Police, Solomon Arase, when he wanted to, because one of the signature, focus of his administration was intelligence-driven policing. So he thought of putting together, a unit that will, use intelligence to track violent crimes like kidnapping, armed robbery, and other violent crimes, And then made Abakari the commander of the IRT. Before then, Abakari was the officer in charge of SARS, Special Anti-Robbery Squad in Lagos. Of course, like we did mention in our statement, in our joint, statement, we acknowledge that the IRT, the Inspector General of Police Intelligence Response Team, has recorded some, achievements in terms of arresting high-profile suspected kidnappers, or even rescuing some victims of kidnapping. And they have received quite some accolades, for their exploit. It looked like the accolades began to indulge that they are set up abducting people. In fact, most of their arrest them, take them all the way to Abuja, detain them for as long as they like, then, torture them to weaken their resolve with a view to extorting money. And they usually extort money in millions for bribe. And not only that, they go about confiscating, property belonging to people they arrest. They take them to the bank and force them to withdraw huge amounts of money in their banks. And these are not necessarily used as exhibit. The team, they share these things, they convert them to personal use. So they became a criminal enterprise. Their impunity, their excesses became so unbearable that even in different state commands, commissions of police had no control over them. They had no respect for commands, to the extent that divisions, area commands, state commands stopped accepting suspects from them. They became a law unto themselves. They became criminals. And I'm sure that the Inspector General of Police must have received quite a huge number of complaints as organizations, among the different organizations that signed that joint statement. Many of us have, intervened in many cases. In fact, 2 days before we came up with that statement, Justus and I had intervened in 2 cases in which we got the OC, the commander of the IRT, to refund money extorted from some victims. And he did that on the understanding that we will not go public on that. But the question was, for how long shall we continue to deal with individual cases like that? Is it even enough to just recover money extorted? What about punishing the officers who act like criminals, who torture innocent people just to extort money from them? And in none of these cases has the commander, taken any step to bring them to account. Rather, evidence points to the fact that he tries to shield them from prosecution. There was a particular case where they had to convert property of a woman whose husband was murdered by SARS, and then they converted all the property, emptied all the bank accounts. And when the police authorities decided to charge, the officers involved to court, obstacles were placed on the way by the units. So we felt that when the IGP came up with that decision to disband the state offices, leaving only the headquarters, and then bringing the headquarters under the control of the Special Investigation Bureau, we felt it was a first right step in the right direction, as we did mention in that statement. And we said that the next step will be to ensure that all the cases, petitions that have been sent to the IG, all the cases documented in reports, like recently the Amnesty International published a report in which some cases involving atrocities by this unit and SARS were also documented. And we thought that the next thing will be for the IG to charge these ones to court to show that the Nigerian police as an institution will not tolerate human rights abuse and corruption. And of course, when this happened, we noticed that some elements came forward claiming to be civil society organizations. But of course, a civil society organization when you see one. A civil society organization that will not, give out its name. In fact, it's not just civil society organizations. Some reporters began to, I call them hired reporters, reporters for pay. They began to write reports to counter the statement that was issued and signed by over 29 notable civil society organizations. And in their reports, they said hundreds of civil society organizations without mentioning the name of any of those. So that tells you that these are hatchets, Of course, the heads of these units that have been brought under control are also fighting back by sponsoring media campaigns to give the impression that civil society is divided on this issue. But I can tell you that if you take a look at the list of the civil society organizations that signed that statement, you know that these are the notable frontline civil society organizations. And I challenge any other civil society organization that is worth that name to come forward and tell us why they think that the decision of the IG is not the right decision to take.
Thank you very much for giving us this background to the formation of these police units. One thing I will, please, we will remind our audience, those who have joined the program, that you are free to ask your questions in due time. So if you have any question to ask, please indicate on the device by raising your hand on the device, and then I will recognize you. I also wish to point out that once we organize this program, I invited the police, chief police relations officer, unless he's no longer in office. I hope Frank Mbang is still the police chief PRO. He is, yes?
Yes, he is.
Yes, so I invited him to this program. I don't know whether he's here. I made sure I explained to him what the discussion is about. If Frank Mbang is here, please let us know. Or at the end of the day, whatever our deliberations are, we will make sure it gets to the police hierarchy. Now, my question at this point is, in your report, I read something like this. We have since lost 82 Nigerians and several others to extrajudicial killings, abductions, indiscriminate harassment, and arrest. If we have the names of these Nigerians who have been killed or who have lost their lives or who have been tortured or who have had their fundamental human rights violated, are any efforts being made by anyone, either by the civil society organizations or by anyone, to see that these families receive justice? Let's hear from Justus, please. Ms. Ijeoma.
Well, that we stated in that statement that we have since lost 82 Nigerians to extrajudicial killings in Nigeria. That does not in any way summarize the number of persons that have been killed by errant police officers in Nigeria in the last 6 months. That is just a sample, like we said in the petition, sample cases. It's not the all that have been, killed by the police in the course of their duties in the last 6 months. So you see, you raised a very serious issue, whether efforts are being made to bring the officers to justice. This is one of the main reasons why I commend the IGP for taking the decision to disband all the satellite offices. Like Okechukwu mentioned, these officers who operate from their satellite offices, you can imagine a police officer will be in Anambra doing police duties, but he is not under the operational control of the Commissioner of Police in Anambra State. Such that if you have an issue with him, you can afford to put a call across to the Commissioner of Police or to any of the top police officers in Anambra State. And the officer, who possibly is an inspector of police or even a sergeant of police, will decline to answer the phone call of the Commissioner of Police. They became a law unto themselves. They became untouchable. They call themselves IGP boys. And whatever you do, whatever you say, except you are privileged to have the contact of their bosses, say DCP Abakaira or DCP Kolo, you are on your own. They listen to nobody, they care about nobody, or they get their instructions only from their masters, who many Nigerians cannot reach. So you can imagine the kind of power they wield. So when Nigerians come face to face with these people, in Anambra State, for instance, where I operate, on daily basis, before their disbandment, we receive reports of youths. Once they see you driving a car, ranging from Toyota Corolla and any other car bigger than that, they will accost you, seize your phones from you, forcibly access your information in your phone without recourse to your right of your privacy. They forcibly access your information and they seize you. The STS, that is Special Tactical Squad, are very, very notorious for this in Anambra State. They will take you, they have their base at the CPS in Onitsha, where they will take you to the field. They will take you to the event station. And there in the field, they will confine you to a particular room where they will ask you to pay 200,000 naira. They will ask you to pay 500,000 naira. And if you don't pay, they will hold you there incommunicable. We had series of interventions where we had the cost to put a call across to their OC, who is DCP Kolo. Of course, all these people, few months ago, I think on the 10th of March this year, BBC Africa released a report. You can check out the report. In the report, they gave account of a particular incident where the court gave judgment to the effect that DCP Kolo, before he was promoted as the head of SARS, a command in SARS, tortured a victim to death in Nigeria. A court made pronouncement to that effect. And instead of this man being punished, he was rewarded with promotion from CSP to Assistant Inspector General of to Assistant Commissioner of Police, and from Assistant Commissioner of Police to Deputy Commissioner of Police. Double promotion. The man whom the court has said there is not even allegation by civil society organization. The families of the victim went to court actually to enforce the fundamental right of their beloved deceased. And the court, in its judgment, said that it is as a result of the torture inflicted on him by CSP Kolo and his men that resulted in the death of the disease. That was a clear, check out the report of BBC Africa. It was a special documentary on torture in Nigeria called a technique of torture called tabe, which is hanging, where their victims are handcuffed, two hands at the back, joined to his legs, and he will be, like a fish to be barbecued. And he will be suspended with his weight hanging on a suspended, say, platform. And that kind of punishment it inflicts excruciating pain and sometimes death. So check out the report and you see what BBC Africa is, not even civil society organizations in Nigeria, like actors like Okechukwu, Nwanguma, or Justus, Ijeoma, or any other person, but a media organization, a reputable media organization, carried out the research and found. You see, the report of Amnesty International just a few days ago, I think on the 26th of June, was clear on the use of torture in Nigeria. And all these formations, police formations, were indicted. And none of these people have been brought to book. I had an incident where the police, for instance, in Anambra State, arrested a businessman, tortured him, even conducted mock execution on him, and extorted the sum of 6 million naira from him. When the victim got freed from their hands, he came and told his story. We took up the matter, engaged the police authorities in Nigeria, and the police found our evidence credible and forced the officers involved to refund the 6 million naira. The 6 million naira was refunded to the victim. But guess what? All these officers that were involved in this heinous crime, none of them has been brought to justice. So one now wonders, how can you come to a conclusion that this person has committed clear infractions of our laws, and yet nothing has been done against the person, and no punishment? How can a society continue to thrive without enforcing our laws, such that those saddled with the responsibility to enforce the laws now take up the duty to break the laws without any sanction being meted out to them? So it's not as if we don't push for such officers to be sanctioned, but it appears the police authorities are complicit in that they are not eager to punish the dissidents amongst them. Rather, they will make all manner of flimsy excuses for the officers who commit these atrocities. So clearly, the decision of the IGP to disband these satellite offices is not hasty. In fact, like Okechukwu mentioned, I do not want to go into the details of that particular case of a woman whose husband was killed by SARS and her estate, confiscated from her and was being appropriated by the officers of the IRT. I personally represented the family at the National Human Rights Commission, where we sent a petition and we were invited to present our case. That was in January 2019. But because the matter is sub judice, we will not. There are cases pending in court in relation to that case. So I wouldn't want to go into the details of the matter. But clearly, these formations, the IRT, the STS, they have been engaged in all manner of heinous atrocities. And I maintain, just like every other conscious civil society actor in Nigeria, every other human rights conscious, person in Nigeria will agree that the decision of the IGP to disband them is a step in the right direction. But that does not solve the whole problem. Like you asked, whether there are efforts being made to bring these officers to justice. We will keep pushing. We will keep engaging with the authorities, reminding them of the need. Because without punishing these people, I don't know how others will be deterred in their choosing, path of illegality. I don't know how they will be restrained in their. I don't know how they will be restrained in their choosing, path of inflicting pain on Nigerians without recourse to the extant rules, without recourse to the extant laws guiding the operations of the police. Police is not an institution that operates, without the law or outside the law. The police is an institution established by law, and every act or action of the police has been provided for. Whatever the police should do or should not do has been provided for in our laws. And if they go outside the law, the only right thing to do is to ensure that such erring officers are brought to justice. So as for efforts being made, we will keep pushing, calling on the police authorities to sanction these officers that commit infractions with reckless abandon. It's not yet Uhuru. We commend the IGP for taking this first step, but yet there are still a lot of work to be done.
I agree with you at this point. The image you have painted is horrible. It's horrendous. It is so bad. Considering what you have just stated now, we will then say that simply disbanding the satellite offices and the closing down set offices, is it enough? Or should the IG have gone furthermore to tackle this problem? Let's listen to Okechukwu, please. If you can unmute yourself. Will we say that, considering the imagery that Justice has painted for us now, is it enough to simply suspend satellite offices, or should the IGP have done more?
I think we addressed that question in our statement quite clearly. In fact, it was prominent in our statement. Even in our concluding argument, we said that while we commend the IG for taking the initial step, which the first right step, that what he needs to do is to take the next step, which is to ensure accountability is key. Accountability for violations, all the officers who are, because it is very easy to identify them. Like I said, civil society organizations have been, monitoring and documenting these cases and actually intervening in specific cases. We have written petitions on specific cases which are pending. So it is easy for the IG to harvest, the names of all the officers mentioned in all these petitions, including the recent report by Amnesty International. So the challenge we have is that failure to bring to account, it is what is giving rise to the climate of impunity. The fact that officers who are responsible for these abuses, for these atrocities, are hardly brought to account. And of course, we understand when the police are not able to, punish officers, their personnel who are involved in human rights violations. And that is why we also have external accountability mechanisms. The National Human Rights Commission organized a public hearing on SARS, on the directives of the president, in the wake of the campaign to end SARS, the End SARS campaign. And it is important to note that all those atrocities for which Nigerians rose against SARS were also being committed by these other units. So now, at the end of that public hearing, where victims and their representatives came forward and testified about the ordeals they went through in the hands of SARS, in the hands of IRT, in the hands of STS, what has the National Human Rights Commission done with that report? What is the Police Service Commission doing? So the challenge, I think that as civil society, our task ends with documenting and exposing and denouncing and making these calls for, prosecution and punishment of personnel, found, involved in these abuses. Now we have, even in the statement that we released, which was signed by over nearly 29 civil society organizations, we also listed specific cases, including the ones where money extorted were returned, which on itself clearly shows that somebody committed an abuse. We made a call that the IG should take the next step of ensuring that investigations are carried out on these specific cases and those responsible brought to account for deterrence, to send a clear message that the Nigerian police does not tolerate human rights violations. Unless that happens, then people will be safe to conclude that the Nigerian police condones human rights violations. And so, but I do know that the Inspector General of Police has taken some steps that make him look serious in dealing with human rights abuses, extrajudicial killing, torture. In instances when police have killed people, the IG has paid unscheduled visits to the families of the victims and reassured that steps were going to be taken to ensure justice. There are a few cases where officers responsible have been handed over for prosecution. Now, nobody is monitoring to know whether indeed prosecution will get to a logical conclusion. We have seen cases in the past when officers who were said to have been, charged for murder ended up, coming back. They were dismissed from Lagos, for example, and you find them in Abia command. We don't want such things to happen. So we want to see evidence that these officers are prosecuted and they are sent and they are given the punishment as prescribed by law. We have the Anti-Torture Act, which was passed into law in 2017. No single police officer, whether in SARS or RULAAC, has been tried based on this act. So Nigeria is not fulfilling its obligations under international law, under human.
Sorry, we're not hearing you. Can you unmute yourself again? I'm so sorry. Continue.
Okay, so I don't know where I stopped.
Continue. Just be very brief. Continue with where you are continuing.
Yeah, so I was saying that the Inspector General of Police needs to demonstrate genuine commitment to tackling human rights abuses, to tackling corruption. to tackling atrocities in the police by ensuring that officers responsible for these abuses, these atrocities are brought to account. Accountability is key in ensuring professionalism in the police, in addressing impunity. It is the failure to punish people who have committed human rights violations that impunity prevails, that officers go about with the feeling that I can do it and get away with it. So unless this happens, then this step that the IG has taken will actually amount to nothing. Because at the end of the day, those officers will still remain within the Nigerian police force and will go elsewhere to be doing something that they were doing elsewhere. So that's my answer.
Thank you very much. Before we take a question from Timelo, who has raised his hand, let me ask this question. Is it right that we should leave the punishment of, should we leave the issue of punishing errant police officers in the hands of the police, where the Inspector General of Police is the head of the system, and policemen have also been accused of committing crimes against individuals? Should we leave their punishment in the hands of the organization again? Let me give an example of what I'm saying. In the United Kingdom, where I live, for example, if the police, in the course of stopping a crime, in the course of investigating a crime, or even arresting an accused criminal, if anybody dies in that process, if, for instance, they're about to arrest an armed robber, then there's a shootout, and that armed robber is killed. Once any individual is killed, once a firearm is discharged, the case is immediately transferred to an independent police investigation body that will investigate the issue and find out whether the officer has committed or has infringed any of his duties or laws. And that independent body are not policemen. Because if you leave a police, that is the question is, should we allow police to investigate themselves? Let me allow briefly Ijeoma to answer this question. Should the police be allowed to investigate themselves? Can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Yes. I think this is a very vital, issue that you just raised. One of the institutions in Nigeria that I have serious grounds against is the National Human Rights Commission. Maybe because human rights, sector is my constituency. That is an agency saddled with the responsibility and clothed with the requisite legal powers to investigate and even make out sanctions against human rights violators in Nigeria. Let me tell you that by the amended act establishing the National Human Rights Commission, they have the power to take a decision, and their decision is almost the same with the decision of a high court of a state or a federal high court. They have the power to, award sanctions, and whatever decision they take, the National Human Rights Commission can only be appealed against at the Court of Appeal.
Really?
Yes, that is the position. But you can see that since the amendment of the act, clothing the commission with that very beautiful, power, that I do not know of anybody sanctioned by the National Human Rights Commission on account of violating another person's fundamental rights. It's not as if cases are not presented to the National Human Rights Commission. not as if cases are not presented before the National Human Rights Commission. On daily basis, petitions are submitted before the National Human Rights Commission by conscious bodies like the rule of law, RULAAC, where Okechukwu works, like IRT, where Ijeoma works, like many other human rights groups who send in petition to the National Human Rights Commission on daily basis. Yet, it is either they are complicit or they do not understand the enormity of the powers. You see, the National Human Rights Commission is a specialized, agency of the government. It's not like any other agency of the government where civil servants just go and they work. It is an agency that should take their work very seriously. Another body is the Police Service Commission. I have said repeatedly that I take exception to the practice in Nigeria where it does appear that the position of the chairmanship of the Police Service Commission is reserved exclusively for retired police officers. You can count that in the last over 50 years now, all the head of the Police Service Commission we've had have been either retired AIG or retired IG or retired IG up to this present moment. That shouldn't be, because once a police officer is always a police officer in my view. The spirit of esprit de corps will continue to exist. You cannot expect a police officer who had been in the system, who may have participated in the impunity, the grievous impunity that we witness in policing in Nigeria. Cannot expect such a police officer upon his retirement and rewarded with the position of the chairmanship of the Police Service Commission to be able to be effective in reining in the errant officers. If we are serious, there are 1,001 Nigerians, credible Nigerians, because the Police Service Commission should be an oversight body over the police, that they are responsible for the promotion and discipline of police officers in Nigeria. Under normal circumstances, the punishment of erring officers should not be left to the police, because man no man must set in if you allow that for them. Man no man certainly must set in. And therefore, there should be a body. It might not be on an ad hoc basis, like you cited in the UK where you live. It must not be an ad hoc body. These two agencies of the government I have mentioned to you, the Police Service Commission, the National Human Rights Commission, these are bodies created by law. Given the amplitude of authority by law to punish erring police officers. But they are lethargic, they are not inspiring, they seem not to understand what they are created to do. And so you see that things are not going the way they ought to be going.
We'll take that point from you. We'll take that point from you at the moment. We'll return back to this point because it is very germane to whatever work you are doing. If you're able to make all recommendations and it's not being put into effect, is of no use. So we will return to that. But let's see whether the questions we'll take from the audience will touch on them in any event. So let's take the first question from our audience, Mr. Hello. Unmute yourself, please, and ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much for having me here. Good evening, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, our guests. My name is Tim Elumba. I don't think I need much introduction in this case because many knew my ordeal 2 years ago. I was a guest of the STS for 25 days. And during those 25 days, it is lessons that I will never exhaust telling, no matter how much time I spend on it. Will I be talking of my personal experiences of right violation, or will I be talking about other people I met there who some of them, their story was just pathetic, to say the least? Or will I be talking about people who were simply disappeared? Sometimes in the middle of the night, there will be a knock on the door and somebody will be singled out and taken to an unknown destination. Some of them never ever returned. I made some investigative inquiries from the cellmates who were there before me, and some of them made me understand that it is a regular occurrence that many a times, many of their mates who were taken away were never returned, and you never hear from them again, which is simply a case of disappearing them, to use that word. Interestingly, like almost all of our guests have hinted on, no accountability. Nobody holds these policemen to justice for their actions or inactions. In our own case, the policeman who spearheaded the operation, let me quickly remind us that my case is a question of abduction here, because you cannot call it arrest. They came all the way to Anambra State and abducted me with nobody knowing our whereabouts to Abuja. They were shocked when I told them that my house is barely 30 minutes drive from their office. They were kind of, what? I said, yes, you guys have just wasted, you just given me a free ride to Abuja, because if you had known I'm from Abuja, maybe you could have just invited me and I will come over for a cup of tea. But what do? Instead, they decided to abduct me and my brothers, thinking they are taking us to an unknown destination. Unknown to them, their office is quite close to my house. Now, can we imagine what could have happened if I was not a resident in Abuja, or none of us was resident in Abuja, and we find ourselves in Abuja in the middle of nowhere with nobody to reach out to? That would have been a case of easy disappearance of me and my brothers. Interestingly, anyway, we survived that ordeal. Now, when the case went on, we expected the policemen to come to court at least to defend their cause. They appeared only in their own criminal case, which they claim they have against us, to make bogus allegations against us, which they could not defend. But when we sued them, we expected them to come. What did they do? They filed ambiguous motions or affidavits and presented it to the court. They refused to come. And it would have been interesting to see that policeman in a court of civil justice where their action would have been really tried, but it was never done. My point is this, because just like one of what our guests have said, that there should be some measure of accountability for the police action, but unfortunately they are not. The police, the judge, in two of civil suits we filed against the police, we won the two suits, and in one suit we awarded 5 million naira damage, in another one we awarded 10 million naira damage. What has ever happened to the policemen who perpetrated, because the judge said that this is an outright case of criminal activity, that this is not an arrest. Coming to somebody's house, jumping his fence by 5 a.m., going into his house and kidnapping a handful of people and disappearing. So he said, the judge said, in fact, it was, my table right now is the court case, is the court papers, which we have just received today officially. So what can the civil societies help, or where can the civil societies come the picture to make sure that these policemen are held accountable for their actions? Because as long as, even if the courts continue to award 1 billion naira damages, 10 million naira damages, and yet those policemen are still out there armed to the teeth looking for somebody to destroy, we might just be, what we are doing here might just be mere academic exercise. So my interest is what can be done to bring these policemen to follow their actions. To make sure that when the government decides to pay this 10 million naira damages to somebody, that somebody must pay for it in one way or the other. That is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's listen to Okechukwu's response to what you have just said. Yes, Okechukwu, please, do you have anything to respond to the issue? How do we make the police to pay any any award of damages to someone who have been wronged? And secondly, even when they pay damages, how do we make sure that the individual policeman who committed, anyway, you've touched on it before, but let's allow you to respond to what Timothy have just said.
Well, one of the key challenges we have in the criminal justice system in Nigeria is the fact that court judgments, court awards of costs are usually not paid. You can't imagine the number of court judgments that Nigerian police are indebted to. Several cases where the courts have awarded damages and compensations against the police to individuals who were violated, whose rights were violated by the police. The police, and that is part of the impunity that we are talking about. The police are not willing to prosecute their own when they, go against the law. When you take on a civil action against them and the courts award judgments, the police are also not willing to pay. And this is where the Attorney General of the Federation comes in. And I think the law regulating this actually poses its own problem. The Attorney General of the Federation, I'm not a lawyer, maybe Justus will be able to more appropriately respond to that. But I know that before the police can pay any damages awarded against them, it will require the approval of the Attorney General. And I really don't know why that provision was included. And there have been calls by advocates, that such provisions be removed, so that there is also what they call the garnishee procedure. Part of it is that even before you can attach the property of the police, you have to get the approval of the Attorney General. So the impunity runs across from the police to the courts. Sometimes even to get the courts to award such judgments takes a lot of time, and it's so expensive that a lot of victims are too poor to even hire a lawyer. And how many cases can human rights, lawyers handle at a time? These things happen every day. So I think it will require an amendment of the law, or the garnishee law, which enables beneficiaries of such court judgments to be able to, approach the bank where the police have more money to get the banks to release the money. But the process, that's like I said, there's an impediment. Maybe Justus will address this more professionally. But let me also add that you were talking about do we expect the police to, punish? Of course, in the first place, the Inspector General of Police, the police as an institution has an obligation to ensure internal control, to ensure discipline, to enforce discipline. So when any officer goes against, against professional conduct, the Inspector General of Police has an obligation to ensure that discipline is enforced. But of course, realizing that often the police may not want to do this, there's this culture of protecting their own. That is why we have external mechanisms. And the mechanism you refer to in the UK, where an external, civilian oversight body, takes on any case of abuse or firearms, the only body that is, similar, comes close to that in Nigeria is the Police Service Commission. And like Justus rightly mentioned, the practice we have here is that the successive governments prefer to appoint a retired Inspector General of Police to head what ought to be an external civilian accountability mechanism, which ought to be outside of the police, but it is meant to operate more like a department of the police, like instead of an agency external that is civilian and external to the police, meant to hold police officers accountable for human rights violations. But you see, the way it is structured, it cannot work. It cannot work. All they do is engage in a promotions, scam, recruitment, scam. They collect money from police officers to promote them. They don't do anything about discipline, accountability, nothing. So I think that we need to really strengthen the Police Service Commission, make it really independent and civilian, so that it will be able to effectively discharge the function of, external holding, police accountable for human rights violations.
I think you have made a very important point here, and that is a task that not just the civil society organizations, but all Nigerians should take it upon themselves. We have lawmakers. If we can get lawmakers to make sure that the head of the Police Service Commission, it should not be a retired police officer. Definitely no. It must be somebody outside the system who is actually independent. We will go back to Justus to highlight more on effective remedies. But before we go back to him, let me read this statement let me read this excerpt from the statement you released to Nigerians. It says, "We currently live in a country where we are 20 times more likely to be killed by police officers than by a terrorist. Number one. Two, suffice to say that majority of our tactical squads have now become criminal enterprises, abducting citizens for ransom under the guise of fighting fraud." I don't know how will a Nigerian feel after reading this. So let's go back to Justus Ijeoma again on this point and the other point that that was still left hanging that you alluded to. Justus, please.
Every line contained in that piece of document is factual. All of us can attest to the fact of it. It is a known fact in Nigeria today that are more likely killed by a policeman than by a terrorist. It is a known fact, like highlighted, that most of these tactical squads, otherwise created to enhance the fight against violent crimes, have turned themselves to become, criminal enterprise. These are facts supported, by empirical evidence. Then coming to the issue of enforcing court judgments arising from fundamental right actions. I say this with a sense of, responsibility. I say this with pain in my heart that our system, in our, system, we only pay lip service to human rights enforcement in Nigeria. Those in authority, they only allow laws to be made, just maybe to show the international community that, look, we are doing this. For instance, the Anti-Torture Act, Mr. Nwanguma mentioned earlier, when they are confronted maybe in the United Nations with issues of torture, and they will quickly tell you brandish the law and say, we have a law, but the enforcement of that law is the issue. Now, coming to enforcement of court judgment arising from fundamental right actions. That is one of the major setbacks facing enforcement of fundamental rights in Nigeria. I've had many police officers tell you can go to court. They would detain maybe a citizen for 10 days, like one of the cases we cited. Mr. Okechukwu was actually detained. One of the cases we mentioned in that petition. So he was actually detained for 14 days by a case that has nothing to do with violent crime, which the young man is completely innocent. And the police found out that early enough, they detained him for 14 days. If you confront them, excuse me, you're violating this young man, they will tell you go to court. Do you know why they could so unabashedly tell you to go to court? They know that going to court in Nigeria has almost become, against the police for enforcement of fundamental rights, has almost become a mere academic exercise. The reason being that even if you go to court and get a favorable judgment, there are bottlenecks already placed on your way to impede your ability to take the benefit of that judgment. For instance, the case of the trader who was arrested in Onitsha, tortured, and 6 million naira extorted from him, which we recovered from the police. We still went to court because the young man was tortured grievously. We still went to court to enforce his fundamental rights. A Nigerian's right, a citizen's right should not be violated. His right to personal right to dignity of human person should not be violated. His right to liberty of human person should not be violated. And these rights are clearly violated. We went to court and showed the court clearly that these rights of these citizen has been violated, and he's entitled to compensation. And the court agreed with us and awarded 5 million naira in damages in his favor. But that is not the issue. The issue is, how do you take benefit of that judgment? How do you levy execution against the police? There is another case. A young man, a lorry conductor who was shot by the police for refusing to give them 500 naira bribe they demanded. The young man pleaded, we have only 200 naira left. We'll be sharing money all the way from Lagos down to Owerri. Please take these 200, that's what we have left. the police detained them from 2 a.m. to about 6 a.m. when they closed in the morning. And when they wanted to leave, they called the young man and said, give us the 200 naira. I said, you have detained, you have wasted my whole night. I would have reached Port Harcourt by now. You did not collect the money. Now you detained me. You want to, I don't have the 200 to be. Out of anger, they shot the young man. And one of his right leg was amputated. These things are not things that happen in the movies. We are telling you practical life issues that we handle. We took up the matter, we went to court. We got judgment of 25 million naira against the police. It is not getting these judgments. There are so many judgments who have already secured favorable judgments against the police as an institution and the officers of the Nigerian police. Where the issue lies is taking benefit, enforcing these judgments. Now, the law that regulates enforcement of court judgments in Nigeria is the Sheriff and Civil Processes Act. Now, this law, whether deliberately or inadvertently, lists some bottlenecks. That if it is a private citizen, for instance, and you have a judgment against him, what you can simply do is to look out for his bank account, to look out for his properties, garnish his account. If he has the money, the court will mandate the bank to pay you. Now, the law provides, the Sheriff and Civil Processes Act provides that for you to levy execution, for you to garnish the account of a public officer or an agency of the government, you have to get the consent of the Attorney General of the Federation. I do not know the rationale behind that, provision contained in that law. But as it stands today, that's the law. You have to get the consent of the attorney. And this consent is very rarely given. How can the Attorney General of the Federation give you consent to go and levy execution on the account of the Nigerian police? That rarely happens. I do not know of people who have been able to secure the consent of the Attorney General of the Federation to levy execution on the account of the Nigerian police. So you see, these are the bottlenecks that are placed already on your way in your bid to enforce this judgment. Because I can tell you that if the police as an agency should cough out 5 million naira to pay my client who was violated and the court has awarded judgment, so the police will not sleep in their responsibility to make sure that that officer is adequately sanctioned, because that will serve as a deterrent to other officers who would want to violate another person's right. If the police should cover out 25 million naira, because if you serve them, they will be able to do research. How did this judgment come about? They will trace Officer XYZ committed XYZ. That's why this judgment has been awarded against the police. Of course, the police will be obligated to pay, but they will pay you and go back to their officer. You see where the seriousness will emanate from. But where there are bottlenecks placed on the ways of Nigerians, you only go to court to play. And at the end of the day, they will laugh at you. Go to court, nothing will happen. Officers will tell you heaven will not fall. And it will appear as if heaven will not fall actually. So these are some of the challenges that we have in enforcing judgment. The judgments of the court. It's not going the issue for me. The problem for me is not even approaching the court, presenting your case, showing the court factually that the right of this young man, this young woman, has been violated, and so he is entitled, supporting your facts with laws and authorities, both statutory and judicial authorities, to show that the person is entitled.
Well, thank you very much. We are almost coming to an end of the. We are almost coming to the end of the discussion. We only have just about 2 minutes remaining to round up. So we have clearly identified the problem. We have identified the extent of the impunity of the Nigerian police. Now we have also touched on the possible solutions. So to round up the discussion, Okechukwu, please tell us in just 1 minute, where do we go from here? How do we start to solve the problem of police impunity? Because I don't know how do people feel when you read that police kill somebody just because of 500 naira bribe. It's disheartening. It is sad. It is heartrending. The family, if he's a family head, he has a wife, he has children. If he's a wife, he has a husband. If he's a child, he has parents. So how do we, what do you think, in just 1 minute, tell us, how do we go from here? How do we go to solving this problem, please, a round up? And meanwhile, if there is anybody who wants to speak, please let us know, because we are coming to an end. Let's listen to Okechukwu, please. In just 1 minute, where do we go from here?
Well, I think that implicit in the submissions we have made, you can find the recommendations of what we think should happen. The Nigerian police leadership must demonstrate that they are committed to ensuring an end to impunity for human rights violations, and the only way, one way to do that is to take the issue of accountability very, very seriously. That Nigerian police, under the current leadership, must send out a strong signal to police officers that the Nigerian police will not tolerate human rights violations, corruption, brutality, torture. And one way the IG of police can do that is to single out some of the officers, who have been subject of high numbers of complaints, including those who have been mentioned in reports, successive reports by Amnesty International, local organizations, and ensure that they are brought to book, and they also ensure compensation for victims. The federal government must also demonstrate commitment to police reform by giving accent to the police bill, which has been, so I understand that both the House of Reps and the Senate have passed their different versions of the police bill pending. That bill contains a lot of reforms that, if implemented, will help to drive police reform in Nigeria. That the president must accent to that bill so that we have a modern law that will replace the colonial law that is, the law that is governing the police is still the Colonial Act of 1943. That the government must also strengthen institutions, including the National Human Rights Commission, the Police Service Commission, so that where the police cannot deal with issues, these other agencies will deal with them. So that, and also, as we just said, remove the obstacles to justice system, including reviewing the garnishee law that requires that the Attorney General must give consent before a beneficiary of a court judgment can get the award given by the court. So in summary, because of time, I want to just leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a wonderful contribution. I think the guy I'm seeing on iPhone could still be Justus. Justus, if you're hearing us, can you tell us, please tell us in 1 minute, even though we are not seeing you, just 1 minute, please, only 1 minute. Where do we go from here? What are the possible solutions that can immediately be put into effect to solve police impunity and extrajudicial killing? 1 minute.
I think the solution to the problems we have with respect to police impunity in Nigeria lies on the government, the federal government particularly, to ensure that our laws are properly enforced. The oversight, the civilian oversight bodies that have the responsibility to sanction police officers, the erring police officers, like the Police Service Commission, like the National Human Rights Commission, should be made truly civilian. They should insulate it completely from the police interference. And the appointment of persons to the chairmanship, to the headship of these bodies should be made a lot more transparent and not a platform for rewarding cronies or loyalists to the government, because these bodies play important roles. And also, our laws should be strengthened. The whole legal framework for enforcement of police accountability should be reviewed. Like Mr. Nwanguma mentioned, the issue of the Sheriff and Civil Processes, Act should be reviewed and made more friendly, so that the bottlenecks we have highlighted earlier will be addressed. And people, because I know that if nobody wants to lose his money, if the police authorities know that Nigerians can now go to court and actually realize money from them for violating their rights in actuity, and I know they will wake up to their responsibilities and ensure that their officers do no longer violate the rights of Nigerians with impunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your wonderful contribution. I think our next goal should be to bring the current chairman of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission to this panel to explain to Nigerians why are you not utilizing the powers. Because I think from what I've said this evening, the Nigerian Human Rights Commission has a lot of powers. I think they have a lot of powers to do to make sure that Nigerians' rights are not violated with impunity. So I think we should bring the chairman of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission to this panel to explain to Nigerians why he is not utilizing the powers that are already allocated to him. And also, we can also push for the legislature or whoever is concerned to make sure that Police Service Commission is not reserved to former policemen, to make it truly independent, to make sure that erring policemen are punished. So thank you very much. It's been a wonderful evening. Rest assured that we'll document the recommendations of this evening and see how far it can go to the people in authority. Thank you very much. I've unmuted everyone. So to thank you all our guests. I can see, I think some people have left, but I can see that we still have up to 7 people here in attendance. So I thank you all for being with us tonight. Hopefully next time you will have some contributions or questions to ask as well. Thank you very much. We've now come to the end of our program. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much for having us.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful engagement.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you
all. It's been
all.
a wonderful night, and I've gained quite a lot from all the contributions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.